Your love. Now you should be able to find it.
Okay. Thank you. It normally will pop up. Oh, it didn't pop up with a notification, but there we go. Alright, like, switch, like, switch. Switch. Share. Oh, now it's popping up. Good evening. Hey, Jan, Bill Weezy. Oh, hey, Jason. Share story? Sure. This has been shared to your story. Hey, David and Christy. Share. All right, guys, it's 7:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I was just sharing this feed with my friends and in the Facebook, the Faith Methodist Church Facebook group. If you got any groups that you want to share with, please do so. Or if you just want to share it either or as your story, or I guess as just sharing. You know how to do that. So please do share the video if you are willing to do that. Just an announcement, this coming Friday night, we will have our 7 o'clock Friday evening prayer, and that'll be through Zoom. If you want to join us for that, please let us know. If you're not already on the list to receive our emails, we want to get that email to you so that you can have the Zoom link, because it's not on Facebook Live. It is through Zoom. You have to have the link, or if without the link, you have to have the specific meeting number and password, which would be, you're just not going to have that. So we want to get that link to you along with the meeting room and password in case you have to log in that way. But that's going to be this Friday evening at 7 o'clock. It is Holy Wednesday. Today's Holy Wednesday, Wednesday of Holy Week. And that means tomorrow night is Maundy Thursday. And that means that Friday is Good Friday. And then, of course, Saturday is Holy Saturday, the day that Jesus was in the tomb. And then this coming Sunday morning is Easter Sunday. And it's really weird celebrating Holy Week and Easter this way, not being able to be together in person. I was talking with a dear friend yesterday, and he and I were just talking about how so antithetical to the gospel and to Christian life and just the Christian faith itself social distancing is. And that's not to say we shouldn't be doing it. That's simply an observation that this is not natural to Christian faith to be separated from each other and not being in each other's presence. So I hope you miss the community that we have. This digital community has been exciting. It's been really neat to see all the people that are watching, all the people that are sharing and commenting. That's really exciting. But I really do hope that God is using this time where we are being socially distant from each other to develop a hunger and a desire for real, tangible, incarnational community. Because I'm telling you, when this social distancing stuff is past, we are going to have a celebration like none other. And it's really going to be good. I miss you guys. I miss seeing all of you in person and being able to hang out and share meals together and go out and things like that. My kids miss seeing y'all's kids, but don't despair. Don't become cynical. Don't be despondent. But do pray that Jesus would use this time to develop a desire for His body, for His church, and specifically the family that we've got together as a local church. If you're watching and you're not part of Faith Methodist Church, we're thrilled to have you with us. If you're watching live, that's really awesome. Please let us know you're watching. If you're watching after the fact because one of our people shared it, please comment or just send us a direct message, something like that, letting us know that you're watching. And maybe if the Lord's using these videos to help you, please let us know how. We're being told from folks all over in different states and whatnot, even that people are watching that we don't even know, and that's because of you, because you're willing to share. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. But if you know of people that are watching that we otherwise wouldn't know, please let me know. Again, my cell phone number is 678-995-9595. That is 6789-959595. You can text me, call me. Email address is adam@faithmethodistchurch.org. adam@faithmethodistchurch.org. Send us an email. Let us know what's going on in your life and how maybe the Lord's using these videos to help you. Feel free to use our comments here, letting us know maybe some scriptures that the Lord's been using to speak to you perhaps this week. What have you been reading? We do try to keep these Wednesday nights pretty interactive and pretty casual. And I'll be honest, I don't have a single bit of notes here with me, which is completely out of the norm for me. I do have a passage of scripture that I'm wanting us to walk through, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. In the meantime, let us know what's going on in your life. Are there any particular songs, bands, particular hymns or anything like that the Lord's been using to help you? Have you been doing anything special, maybe with the family or in your own devotional life this Holy Week? What's been going on there? Oh, Rachel! Hey, Rachel! She said she started reading Isaiah. Oh, what a beautiful text to be reading, especially during Holy Week. That's awesome. Oh, Chris Williams says, we watching, and I'm glad you is, Chris. I appreciate that. Are the kids with you? Jamie with you? If so, that's awesome. Well, he did say we, so I'm assuming it's more than just you. But that's really awesome. Again, Friday evening prayer, 7 o'clock. If you want to be a part of that this coming Friday, shoot me an email, send me a text, call me, direct message or private message me, or just comment here and let us know, hey, I need that link, and we'll make sure that you get it. We did have an outstanding prayer meeting this past Friday night. It really was awesome. We had more people than our first one, which is not. If we had less, it wouldn't be worse of a prayer meeting. But we had a really, really good time together. We had a great time praying together, and it was really encouraging. I think, for all that participated in that. Our website, if you want to find out more information about us and the ministry that we do, if you want to subscribe to our podcast, listen to episodes from our podcast, if you want to know how can you support our ministry by giving, that's really convenient, but it's on our website, faithmethodistchurch.org. If you haven't been there to check it out, please consider doing so. So I know that last week we started by talking about bread and bread recipes, and there were some interesting ones. I happen to know that we have some that have not made the peasant bread, who've been wanting to make the peasant bread, and then I also know that we have some that have been talking about it that did make it, because Jan sent me pictures. I think it looked like she had at least one loaf. It was at least one loaf. I thought it was maybe part of another, so I don't know how many loaves she made. But I was really, really excited to see that. And it looked very familiar. It looked perfect. I'm sure it tasted perfectly. Or tasted perfect. Yeah, tasted perfect. Because to say tasted perfectly would be adverb, and the bread is not doing the tasting. It is perfect is what that would mean. It's a linking verb. You never know what sort of grammar lessons you're going to get in this sort of thing. And if you're confused as to why it's a linking verb, we'll talk later. let me know. So what I wanted to do after I killed a few minutes of just chit-chatting, which we've successfully done now, and I think pretty incredibly, was to look at Hebrews chapter 11. It's probably the most familiar passage in Hebrews. It's a chapter that as soon as you hear it started, you know exactly what's coming up. It's such a familiar passage, and it's one that we've referenced a few times in our Sunday morning gatherings throughout Lent. But I wanted to just go verse by verse. It is a lengthy passage, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just begin reading. I don't have notes, so I have no clue what sort of magic's going to happen tonight. But we'll just start going verse by verse, and I just want to point out some things as we move through the passage. And I do have a couple of ideas that I want to make it a point to share, and we'll get to those as they come up. But this passage begins with that very familiar verse. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. If you're wondering what translation I'm reading, I am using the English Standard Version. And so you might be used to hearing that first verse with a little bit of different language. But now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. For by it the people of old received their commendation. That is, by their faith they received their commendation. By faith we understand that the universe was created by the word of God. It's recalling back Genesis chapter 1, where God spoke all things into existence, but it's also recalling back, pushing our minds back to John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Talking about Jesus. So it was created by the Word of God. All that we see is here because God willed it, and because God spoke it into existence by His Son. So that what is seen was not made of things that are visible. So God was not just working with material that was already raw and they're available to Him. In fact, everything that we make, we're using borrowed material, but God spoke all things into existence from nothing. The Latin is creatio ex nihilo, creation from nothing. By faith, Abel, interesting. We don't talk much about Abel. You've got very little said about him other than what you read in Genesis chapter 4. But here it says, by faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous. God commending him by accepting his gifts. And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. Now that's the first time it references, and this is the first person that's mentioned in chapter 11 in this by faith or this hall of faith chapter. But this very first person who's commended for his faith and is considered righteous for his faith, he dies. And we know how he dies. He was murdered. He was murdered out of anger and out of frustration and out of some sick sense of vengeance. His brother Cain murdered him. But he still speaks. By faith, Enoch, another person we know very little about. I believe 4 verses of scripture in the book of Genesis tells us about Enoch. He was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him. Now before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. Interesting that these first two people that are referenced, Abel and Enoch, we know very little about them, but we know that one died horribly, unrighteously, unjustly, and the other did not see death, but he was taken up to be with God because of the intimacy of his relationship with him. Notice both of them have faith. One, his story does not end well, and the other, his story ends gloriously and remarkably. But both of them have faith and are commended by it. When we suffer, when bad things are happening to good people, we scratch our heads and we wonder, Lord, what are you doing? Even if we don't believe that the Lord is doing it or causing it, Lord, why are you letting this happen to me? And I want to not in an insensitive way, but just in a realistic way, remind you that the scriptures never tell us, they never promise us that all days will be wonderful, that our lives will always end with us being rich, fat, and happy. They don't promise us a lack of suffering. They don't promise us a lack of injustice. In fact, all throughout the scriptures, Jesus himself, his life ended on the cross unjustly. We'll get back to that a little bit more here in a bit. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. For whoever would draw near to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark, constructed this box that became a boat, for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. Now all these people are people prior to Abraham, the father of faith, as we often call him. But these people exercise faith by their radical trust in God and their dependence upon him. By faith, here's where Abraham comes in. He obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going, but by faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land. So he's a foreigner, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking, this is such a beautiful passage, he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. I wish I could tell you how many times the Hebrews writer tells us the phrase, uses phrases like this, the designer and builder. We've been using the phrase pioneer and perfecter over and over again. The Hebrews writer uses these couplets of nouns that are put together. But Abraham, his son Isaac, and and grandson Jacob, they were looking forward to a city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. God himself has built this city. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age. Here's something miraculous. Nothing miraculous has happened yet other than Enoch being taken up to be with God. But here we're told about a miracle that God performed in Sarah's life. She was unable to conceive. She was beyond years of childbirth because of her age, and her husband was 10 years older than she was. She was 65, he was 75 when God called them and promised them a child, even though they were barren. But by faith, she received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who promised. She considered God who made promise faithful. And if you're to know anything tonight, I want you to know that no matter what life brings your way, no matter how bad things are, no matter what, I know we're not being persecuted right now, but even when persecution comes, I want you to know that you can bank your life upon God's faithfulness. She considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, that's Abraham, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar. Still out there, promises that have not yet been realized. They still greeted them, knowing God is faithful. He will always keep his word. And having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth, knowing this is not my final home. This world is broken, it is hurting, it is lost, it is filled with darkness. This is not the end game. For people who speak thus, make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. What's your homeland? If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country. I've been telling you for weeks about those comparatives and superlatives. That is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God. Such a beautiful way of putting it. For he has prepared for them a city. Going back to Abraham. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God, why did he trust God? Because listen to this. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he had already received him back. In other words, Abraham was looking forward to the grave. He was beyond his years of being able to have kids. His wife was beyond childbearing years. And figuratively speaking, God had given them this child from the grave. So surely, God can raise him up again. You've got these allusions and early kind of whispers of the resurrection in these Old Testament patriarchs and saints. By faith, Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau. By faith, Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. And I love that it alludes to his staff because, of course, the staff is bringing to our minds the idea of a shepherd and someone who leads. But the idea of the staff also reminds us that Jacob was wounded from wrestling with God, wrestling against God's blessing on his life. And when God finally says, fine, you don't want my blessing, I'm leaving. After that long night of wrestling, he says, you can't leave me like this. And so God does bless him, but he wounds him. He wounds his hip, and he walks with a limp from then on. And Jacob, one who had wrestled with God, whose name was changed to Israel, the one who wrestles with God and man, he is able by faith to continue leaning on that staff that reminds him of his wound. By faith, Joseph, at the end of his life, made mention of the exodus of the Israelites, which was hundreds of years away, and gave instructions concerning his bones. Don't leave me in this land. Take me to our homeland. By faith, Moses, when he was born and hidden for 3 months by his parents, because they saw that the child was beautiful, and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. He didn't want what Egypt had to offer. He considered the reproach of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt, for he, again, was looking to the reward. He knew God has something better in store. By faith, he left Egypt, not being afraid of the anger of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and sprinkled the blood so that the destroyer of the firstborn might not touch them. And that's what this week, Passover week, Holy Week, the week that Christ laid down his life on the cross for us, that's what this week is all about. God himself in his incarnate Son has become our Passover lamb. He has shed his blood so that we might know his life, and his life might be infused in us, protecting us from spiritual death. By faith, the people crossed the Red Sea as on dry land, but the Egyptians who were pressing in behind them, when they attempted to do the same, they were drowned. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. Absurd, miraculous. By faith, Rahab, the prostitute, who's an outsider, an outcast, someone who's not a child of Abraham's, being grafted in to Abraham's line and ultimately into the line of Jesus. She did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had been given a friendly welcome. She had given a friendly welcome to the spies. And what more shall I say? He begins to speed it up. He's going to start listing multiple examples of people who lived radical lives by faith. Some of these lived lives that were almost superhuman. It was incredible what God did in their lives. Miraculous how God watched over them and preserved them and helped them. And then others, it seemed like God had all but abandoned them and forsaken them. They died horrible deaths. But here he begins to speed up the pace. He says, what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah. Those are all judges. Of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions. Daniel, anyone? Quenched the power of fire. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Incredible things God did in the lives of these saints. Women received back their dead by resurrection. Some were tortured. Now here's where it's not good. Refusing to accept release, they were tortured so that they might rise again to the better life. Others suffered mockings and flogging, even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were killed with the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated. I think it's telling that the Hebrews writer here is putting together some horrific things, someone being sawn in two. And yet some things that we might think are kind of mild. Okay, they were mocked. They had to wear weird clothes, and they seemed like outsiders. But I think the Hebrews writer wants us to know that no matter what horrible things we're going through, no matter what the variance or level of horror of horrible things are in our lives, God is there, and God sees it all. No matter how terrible it might be on the scale of terrible, no matter how minor even it might be, just being mocked a bit. He's not belittling any of that. God sees it all. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. So they went out in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy. That's not a call to arrogance. But can it be said of your life that you're living by such faith in God that the world is not worthy of you? Again, that is not a call to arrogance. Wandering about in deserts and mountains, in dens and caves of the earth. He seems here to be alluding to the time of the Maccabees, that family 150, 60 years before Jesus. People who were battling against the powers of their age, fighting for righteousness, fighting for God's people who were trying their best to be obedient and faithful to God. All of these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us. That is, people who are living this side of Jesus, his incarnation, his crucifixion, his resurrection, and ultimately his ascension to the Father to be glorified. We are the beneficiaries of redeemed and glorified humanity. Christ, our high priest, sits at the Father's right hand, living forever to make intercession for us, his saints. These people died before him. They died just seeing that God's promises were still not fulfilled, but surely he'll fulfill them. Surely he'll make good on his word. They did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better for us, that apart from us, they should not be made perfect. I was listening to a very short, 3-minute video by Jerry Coleman of the Francis Asbury Society last night. David, you might have seen it. I tagged you on it to see if you had seen it yet. And it was a wonderful video. And he brought to mind a number of things. One being that we obviously live in a world that's broken, in a world that is not as it was intended to be. And what went wrong was we went wrong. We broke it. We're the ones that were given freedom as people made in God's image. And that freedom requires risk. Freedom means the ability to do otherwise. And that otherwise was will we choose not to trust God, our Maker? Will we choose not to live by faith in him? Will we turn away? And sin, the history of sin, is the story of what happens when we turn away from God. But one of the points that he made was, we read in the Psalms, particularly Psalm 91, Psalm 46. There are others that you surely know. You have this promise that God is going to protect his people, that God is going to watch over them. I'm reminded of the end of Habakkuk, the prophet who's arguing with God about how unfair life is and how bad things are, and the Assyrians are so horrible, and God says, I'm going to judge the Assyrians. He's like, okay, I want to see this. He says, I'm going to judge them by raising up the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. What? They're even worse. And Habakkuk knows that life is about to be miserable, more miserable than he's already known it. And what he ends up saying is, even if nothing successful in life happens, even if we have no harvest and the bank account runs dry, if we run out of food in the pantry, he says, I will defiantly trust in God because he's faithful. And he makes this weird statement. He makes my feet like the deer's, and he makes me tread on my high places. Well, this is someone who's going through something terrible, a really horrible situation, and he says, even still, God's got me. God's with me. And the point that Jerry ended up making was that God does not promise us freedom from suffering. And that is not to belittle our suffering at all. He does not promise us that life will go well for us, that we'll be successful, that we'll be rich, that we'll be healthy, that horrible things won't happen. We see terrible things happening all around us every day. And as we're being socially isolated, and we read all the reports and hear all the news reports about those that are suffering from this COVID-19, we know that the world is filled with pain and hurt and loss and death and darkness and all of those things. But what God promises us is not protection from all of that necessarily, but protection in all of that. I can pull my kids together. I can keep them close by. I can make sure that I've got my eyes on Lindsay, my bride, and I can do everything within my power to protect them. And still, in the end, we can end up not really being all that successful in that protection. But the difference is that I can be there with them. And God promises to be there with us in the midst of suffering. That's not all that the story of Jesus is about, but that's a huge part of it. God, the Son, the one who spoke all the worlds into existence, the one who told the sun where to be, who put the moon up in the starry night, that God, he has come and tabernacled among us. He has pitched his tent with humanity. He has become one of us. He's drawn near to us. And that's what we've been saying all throughout this study of Hebrews. Has been about God has drawn near to us in his Son, and he invites us to therefore be able to draw near to him because Christ has made a way by being our priest and by shedding his own blood, that of a lamb. And this story, or this chapter, it's recounting in very summative and very quick-moving form. It's recounting the lives of people who even before Jesus banked all of their faith and trust upon the God who makes promises and the God who keeps promises. And one of the promises that God makes that's all throughout Scripture, get out your concordance and look it up, get up on Bible Gateway and look it up, or just Google it. God makes this promise over and over and over and over again, all throughout the Bible, the prophets, the Psalms, Revelation, all over. He says, I will be with them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. God loves you so much that he wants to be with you. He wants to be near you. He loves you, and he likes you that much. And that's comforting to know when life's not going as planned, when things aren't as expected, when bad things are happening to good people, when good things are happening to bad people, and wondering, Lord, what gives? Where are you? How long are you going to let this happen? What he promises us is not protection from the storm, but he's the one who rides upon the storm. He promises us protection within and even through the storm. So much so that he'll take our pain, and he'll take our suffering, and he'll take our hatred, and he'll take our vengeance, and He'll take our angst, and He'll take even our disease and death upon Himself and into Himself. And what He does is He comes out. Easter is the story of Him coming out the other side of it all as our triumphant King, the one who is victor over it all. And so we're called, hearing the stories of these who lived by faith and who were commended by their faith and were made righteous because of their radical trust in God, we're called and invited to do the same, to live radically as people who trust radically in the God who makes some pretty radical promises, but He is always radical in being faithful to keep those radical promises. I trust that's a blessing to you. It doesn't answer all of your questions. It doesn't even, it's not the most comforting thing to hear that God's not going to keep you from all your troubles. But it's reality. And and Jesus is reality. He is the one who says, I will be with you in the midst of it. And so you can bank on that. He's with you. He's near you. Draw near to Him. Any questions that you guys might have? Hey, Mom, I see you and Dad are watching. That's awesome. Oh, hey, Catherine. Good to see you as well. I'm seeing people sharing this feed. Thank you so much. That's so awesome. Don't forget, if you want to be in on the Friday evening prayer this coming Friday night, 7 o'clock, it'll be through Zoom, not on Facebook Live. So let us know if you need the link for that. I'll shoot you an email with the Zoom link for that. We want to make sure that everybody that's wanting to participate in it has the opportunity to do so, but you got to have that Zoom link to be able to get into that Friday evening prayer. Hey, Tom, Carrie, I see y'all watching. That's awesome. Thank you for joining in with us. Please don't forget, share this video. Be sure and tell your friends about it. Y'all have an incredible rest of this Holy Week. We're going to try to do some special stuff over these next few days, putting out different things. Hopefully you've been seeing on Facebook that we've been sharing from the Gospel of John each day this week. We've also been sharing articles written by Dr. Steve Blakemore from the John and Charles Wesley Center. If you haven't checked out their website, please do so, jcw on center.org. I keep getting that wrong, jcwcenter.org. Check out our website, faithmethodistchurch.org. And if you haven't already liked and followed our Facebook page, please consider doing that, Faith Methodist Church. And we'll be doing some special things over these next few days. So y'all be on the lookout for it. We love you, and we're so glad to be doing this this I don't even know what to call it, this quarantine together with you through Facebook Live and Zoom. We love you. Bye.